I'm really excited about this whole industry and becoming more involved with it. Yeah, a lot of really important things have been said. So as we move into our third principle of the day, we're asking everybody to reflect upon the principle of the Ujima. That's the third Kwanzaa principle of the day. So we begin by saying Habari gani, and the response is Ujima. What is the news? The news is, how will we build and maintain our communities? How will we do it? Will we do it together? Will we make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems? And will we solve them together? So that's what I heard coming really quite a bit out of the Kujichagulia discussion, the self-determination. So now we have an opportunity to build on that even more. And in order to do that, we have to have unity, right? How are we going to solve our problems as a people if we're not united, if we don't have self-determination? That's the beautiful thing about the Kwanzaa principles, is they keep building on each other. So I'll light the third candle. Ujima. Collective work and responsibility. These principles are intended to be internalized, to be lived, to be reflected upon, and to do planning around. Ashe.
Thank you to come and spend this time with you. And I will say, so I'm a new farmer. I'm Marie McGruder, and I'm down here in Alabama, Sawyerville, Alabama. I'm 59 years old. I'm from Florida. I grew up in Florida. I went to University of South Florida, got a math statistics degree. I started as an actuary, went on to get my master's in international finance and investments. Then I became a CFO. I've been with Harley-Davidson, was with Harley-Davidson for over 15 years. Out being the urbanite, living in cities, enjoying my life, but I always knew that my family had this land in Alabama. And, you know, when I was younger, I came and visited the land, but, you know, I said I wanted to be here 58 years ago, but, you know, it was just something I said as a child, only to find myself 2 years ago getting a check in the mail from my heirs, because this is heirs property and they'd sold quite a bit of the land. And once I got that little check, I thought, I don't want the money, I want to know about the land. So my family gave me the opportunity to come, and I ended up buying land. And as fate would have it, I left corporate America, I came to be on the land, and now I'm a steward over 150 acres of the family land that's left. Kind of interestingly enough, so I've been here a year as a farmer, a new farmer. I haven't put the first seed in the ground, but I have all this land, and we're prepping. And today, right before I came on, I got my approval for my hemp license. So now I will be going into my first year growing hemp on, I'm going to grow industrial on 2.5 acres of the land, and also in the tunnel, high tunnel, we're going to do industrial and obviously for CBD. So it's been like drinking from a fire hose, because I also have an organic garden, flower garden, herbs. I'm learning all this stuff. And I'll say this, you know, I'm a Christian and I have a spiritual base, but this whole thing around ancestral guidance is new to me, and it is real. And when I tell you, from the time I walked on this land until today, just the experiences and the sense of community, because being that I am not a farmer, when I moved to Alabama, the farmers in this community, Mother Muhjah and others who have basically taken me under their wing, have been very gracious in welcoming me into the community and patient with me as I transition, has really gives me the confidence to move forward and to continue to just do what my ancestors called me home to do. We've owned this land since 1867, right out of emancipation. My great-great-grandfather purchased land, started buying from the indigenous people on the land. And then during the Great Migration, my great uncles all went north, including my father. And so I am, along with my 84-year-old great cousin, are the only two residents in Alabama on the land. So we've just sort of passed the torch for me as the steward of the land. So community to me is recognizing, one, all of my cousins and family members that live on the land surrounding me. Also being in Alabama, the disparity economically and the poverty is something that I take very dearly. So as I come to be a part of the community, bringing my economic and my financial background and transitioning it into developing community, jobs, an economy. There's nowhere to, we don't even have a place for a hotel. So as my family comes, we have to find a place for them to stay, and we have to go 40 miles away. Well, my goal for my land, our land, is that we have a place, residents, and start creating just business here. So that's sort of what community means to me, not just for me and my family, but for those who are here, and drawing back those who have left to come and recognize that this is really, it's a calling, as you said. And so I just.
Well, Habari, gani, everybody.
Ujima.
Well, today's Nia, so Nia Habari gani. So I've been, I actually grew up in a community called Ujima in Chicago. So it's a gang of us cousins out here. So shout out to the Ujima who, we lived, these principles have been poured in us, now that we're like the middle-aged folks, but, we're all the relics of the civil rights movement. Kids, basically, or we call them the civil rights all-stars during that time. And so for me, that value is just embedded in who I am, in the DNA of who I am. It added another dimension to, as a boy from the South Side of Chicago, via, the Great Migration, 2 generations in. So my family is from Grenada, Mississippi, from Sweet Home. And so, there's my maternal line, and then my paternal line is from Oklahoma and also Louisiana. And so I am the young griot in the family, because I used to talk to all the old people and ask them a million questions. And that is what I enjoy just naturally. And so all of that has been informing how I move in space, how I organize in my professional life. So I come to this space with all of those things as part of who I am, and how I'm operating, and really being grounded in that conviction of who we are as the brilliance of African people, and that all is possible because we're here. So I'm often refuting, the kind of tropes that we all buy into about who we are and what we don't do. And during this time of Kwanzaa, I'm also reflecting of like how much we have done and what we are able to accomplish, in particular on this day of purpose. And so I think for me, the reason I even got into urban ag was through policy. So I worked for a member of Congress for 7 years. I'm a policy nerd. I'm an organizer. I'm a little bit a community brother at large. Not even a little bit. I am a community brother at large. So I do a little bit. I'm an entrepreneur, so I stayed curious is the point. And so I have been at this intersection of urban ag and environment for almost 20 years now. And man, that flew fast. But nonetheless, thinking about, how policy is shaped, our voices when they have a cacophony of other voices, that organizing body that is needed, that is so much more stronger than it was even 15, 20 years ago. So, when the millennials and Gen Zers, there is no separation in these generations, it's just a kind of further building on what the ancestors have left for each of us, and for us to remind each other of that. And so that brought me into this space. And that's how I got involved in urban ag, being a conduit for farmers, in particular around land and land management in the urban spaces, and then networking. So our whole approach for an organization that I co-founded, Grow Greater Inglewood, is around transforming urban spaces, vacant lots, into urban farms. And then also working with a network that extends into the peri-urban and the rural communities. They all need heavy amounts of infrastructure and capacity building, because farming is hard work. It is, it is the Lord's work. I mean, you are not still going to put it in and it's going to come out the way that you think. And that is the perfect metaphor for life. And that kind of placed me in a real unique position around cannabis. And so in Illinois, that transformed. I was part of the Governor Pritzker, who won in 2018, took office in 2019. I was part of his transition team. So help be a part of what was, a community voice to something that I think in terms of this industry and hearing about the industry and how it's evolved over the last just decade, essentially, where, states have started to decriminalize or to offer it as a vehicle for to make money, essentially, and for them to be taxing that. So, how I'm thinking about Ujima now and how we thought about it from the beginning when we started advocating was that advocacy would have to continue, and that we were just setting, it wasn't as sexy as it is now. Everybody is talking about cannabis. But at the time, just 3 short years ago, it was really difficult to get people to, really pay attention to what was going to happen. And it was going to happen in this state because they were looking for revenue. And so that level of sophistication and the dynamics of policy, we understand all of that. And now it's just about us also sharing that understanding, because there are a lot of folks who understand that all these nuances come into play. And so for us, that led for my company, which is called Ours, a cannabis company, which I'm also, is a nascent cannabis company, and who seeks to be a fully, vertical company, which is for organic urban revitalization solutions. So, that's my kind of background around, how do we connect all these dots? How do you use this plant, the wonders of not just this plant, but other plants in terms of its medicinal value, its pleasure and value, which is also sometimes skipped over for the medicinal, because people are using it for pleasure. And we might as well accept that and acknowledge that as part of our talking points. And then also, being responsible with that as well. So all of those things are what, brings me into the cannabis space and being able to create really good products that, carry all of those values to the larger consumer base. So that's what we're attempting to do. And also to think about it in a more, which was yesterday, cooperative economically structured vehicles, so that there's more opportunity for not just one millionaire to be created, but multiple folks to be able to start to think about wealth creation, at least in that kind of sense.
If you could speak to that.
Sure. So for me, to be honest with you, I have a 24-year-old daughter who's at Georgia State. And when I came here, she said, Mom, I need you to get into this hemp space. You need to get into cannabis. And so on the little plot map of our farm, I set out this little acreage and I said, okay, baby, for you, I'm going to do this. But once I got here and came to in Alabama, looked at just even trying to interact with the government agencies. Before we even get into the cannabis, let's just talk about agriculture as a whole. To walk in and have entitled and have rights to and should have access to resources that have been set aside for all Americans, and to come in and then find out that you're being treated differently or information is being withheld, or the whole process has been designed to wear a group of people down and keep us out of the game. And so a year ago when I came in, I started interacting with my local USDA office and government agents. And what I think they realize is that I wouldn't go away. So what I would say is, when I look at the neighboring town, like a Tuscaloosa or Birmingham, there are stores, CBD stores, and there are farms and a lot of white farmers, and they're vertically integrated, and they're on acreage, and they have access to sell their product. All of that is what we as a people need to come and realize, that we can't look to them, to others, to create these markets for us. for example, for me, while I'm waiting on the USDA to come and help me with fencing or whatever, I have another consulting business. So my consulting business is actually funding my farm. There are no real resources set aside for someone like me and others who need infrastructure and need access to markets. So one of the things I think coming in that I realize is we're going to have to do something different. We can do a lot of talking, but the talking isn't going to work. We're going to really need to put our dollars where our mouth is. And I can say personally, I had to because I didn't have a choice. So, you know, I've given my business loans. You know, I'm just going to say something because what I'm coming to realize is while we're carving out our space to work in this industry, there are other industries where we have access to resources that we either it's tabooed or we don't know about. And I'm just going to give an example. I was in a clubhouse about 6 months ago, and it was brought up about this company called CXW. Well, CXW is the criminal, that's the privatized system for the prison system, right? Well, some folks have known about this stock for a long time and are making really good returns off of this stock. And I just put some money in because I'm like, I want to see. And I just looked today, this stock is up 53% in the last 6 months. So as I'm looking for resources, while, you know, we can say, but those are our people who are incarcerated because of cannabis, you know, drug crimes or whatever, however you want to look at it. But at the end of the day, somebody's making money off of us. So the returns that I'm getting off of that stock is going into my farm because at the end of the day, hopefully, you know, there's some grants out there for housing, so I can bring on employees. I have to come up with a creative way to utilize everyone in my community. That means those who are coming out of prison. That means the resources that are made off the prisons, but all of it still has to come back to the community, the families that are left behind who are still trying to make ends meet. I have a nonprofit called the Tribe of Jacob's Ladder in order to help in a small way, you know, in a way to give back to the community. So I think what I would say is, I think policy is great and we're waiting for it to happen. But in the meantime, I got plants that need to go on the ground. I have employees that I need to hire. I have a whole industry and people that I have to integrate with and network with, because even once I grow this plant, who am I going to sell it to? How am I going to get a return off my investment, or how am I going to get a return off the money that's being invested to keep me in business for 1, 2, 5, 10 years? How am I going to build a business that's going to work for me and my heirs and the community? So as I think about how policy is being put in place, I have my ear to the policy and there are individuals doing great work, but as a farmer, I'm going to have to come up with creative ways to be able to employ folks in my community and to be able to give back to my community so that this is going to be around for others to enjoy later on in life. Because I don't think anyone else from the policy side or those who are in position to buy this plant, they're not necessarily looking at me as a potential grower or someone who has something to offer. I'm going to have to make that way. I'm going to have to forge those paths, and it's not going to be direct. I'm going to have to take inroads and do very unconventional approaches in order to, stay in this industry. So, now I'll pass it to you, Mr. Seals.
Yeah, I think that, for me, I think that, the plant itself, so you said a lot there. I think that, because I work with a lot of, our role, there's two different pieces for me is, we started Grow Great Inglewood around the urban ag space and influencing both because we knew that policies drive programs and not the other way around. In particular around, so we're, doing systems work. And so I also put in the chat, there's a national network of us who are Black and brown, or pretty much all Black, who are in alliance across the country because these issues are long-standing. And so no one individual innovation within our space will be able to shift that because it's structural, right? And to your point, you are still paying taxes. We can be savvy and also have these kind of ways that we are able to circulate resources back into our own projects, which is important. I think that also just thinking about the collective work and responsibility is also part of being, involved in this democracy is that this is ours as well. Giving the agency like that our ancestors built this space for whatever it is. So it's not often, I think one of the things we're struggling with in our communities is around the notion of equity versus liberation. And those concepts are two different concepts, because on one end, we want equity to be able to have some level of parity of what they have, right? Or what we feel is old, right? Which is old. But then also this level of like, how much do we want to be involved in a system that has yielded these kind of outcomes, right? Because capitalism is going to yield this kind of outcome. So it's just something that I think many of us who have been advocating in this space, because cannabis is situated in the larger agriculture sector. So it is just but one plant, you know what I mean? And if I could just talk, like what will even become more profitable and even on par with cannabis is the psychedelics. The growing mushroom industry that is taking flight as we speak, right? That has even more research. So there's a lot of opportunity for, not only the next generation, but those who are curious around this space, around where technology and agriculture meet. But they are not removed from community. And that's so important, because often businesses are seen like over here and movement work is seen like over there. And those things have to be connected in a way in order for us to have a collective working responsibility. And in cannabis, we can see that in some of the shortcomings that have come from the sector being legalized, right? Where we know that across the nation, that there's I think one of the panelists before said there's a capital problem, right? But the plant itself, I think, has so many different aspects to it. And what we're doing from a capitalist perspective is mining for how we can individualize it for our own market piece. And that's what capitalism does. It's not a wrong thing. I'm just saying that's what it's doing. But we also have to be mindful of how this impacts the larger environment and the race for. So that's another big thing that I think that people in this sector are also, especially us who are stewards of the earth, as Africans, like how much energy is it taking that's going to be able to continue to move this industry as it continues to get bigger from the, in particular in like the northern states where, in many of the southern states where they will prohibit, outdoor grows, right? And having mostly indoor grows, like what's that impact on our environment? So I think all of these things are questions. I'm coming here with more questions than I am just like, here's the solutions, because I think that is part of the collective work and responsibility. I can share the wisdom of some of the things that we've learned in acquiring land in Chicago, shifting land policies in Chicago, what that slow move, and then like, how does that set us up for a cannabis sector that gets at this level of equity, right? In cannabis. So I think that that's part of the dilemma that, and it always was part of the dilemma. I said that when we passed it, I don't even know what social equity is. You know what I mean? It's a manufactured term. It's like, oh, it's social like it sounded like but it's something that's stuck. It's in the industry, but it's like it's not something that many people, in particular, many white people believe in. Like they don't believe in these things because in their minds, America has afforded everyone the same opportunities. And as Africans and Black people in this country, what we've known, even as the last generation prior to the Gen X, the baby boomers, have acquired some level of, there has been gain. So it's not an absolute in this equation at all. Because sometimes I think we speak in absolutism is like, we didn't do anything. Like, no, there was a lot of folks who made gains. The people who are now 75 and, this is the Soul Train generation. Like they were able to go out and acquire things that their grandparents would have never imagined that they would be able to do. Buy homes, send their kids to, so I think we have to wrestle with these things. And that's the same thing I think that's going to happen in cannabis. that is happening in cannabis. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a founder and a CEO of a company, you know, making these strategic decisions on how I'm interpreting and making sure that our return on investments, like as I'm out here trying to raise money, how does it reflect in the same values that, you know, I want to exude in the marketplace? And then also, am I listening to my consumers, to the people that I am trying to sell to? What is it that they want? What is it that they need? So all of those things are part of, I think, a growing industry that is, juxtaposition in this kind of notion of collective work and responsibility versus like, you got to get yours, you got to get mine. You know, so I think those things are always in tension. And I think that that's okay when we bring it back to the table and discuss, because then it's like, these are the different approaches within our village that we are taking. So this communication channel is super important, because it's not about, I think one of the lessons from the last generation is for us to continue to sharpen each other, to hold each other to account, to push each other, but base it out of love. So those are some of the things I'm thinking about as we think about, you know, Ujima on this day. And you know, and I'm a cannabis consumer since 88. So, I mean, it's one, and I would say also another thing, the collective work is like for us to destigmatize cannabis in a way, like if you're having a glass of wine, nobody looks at you like you are on drugs, right? I think that what I've seen since I've been in the industry over the last several years, since 2012, when I started seeking interest, that resistance from, in particular, the people who are now older, which is the irony of it, because the people who are now older are people who were like young and hip in the 70s. So they did everything, hands down, or they knew somebody that did everything. There's no doubt about it. That generation had access, and it was, you know, ended up being a negative thing, but they had exposure. And there was a lot of resistance to cannabis. I was part of a larger group that in Chicago was going to be one of the first when they have medicinal licenses out. And this is a good telltale sign. And the community, the Chatham community on the south side of Chicago, rejected them putting this dispensary, which they thought would just bring all of this negative stuff to their community. Now, fast forward, here we are, we passed, cannabis is now recreational and medicinal. And the same, you know, community, when I went to the community meeting, this was right before the pandemic, actually, it was like that February, were open to the conversation, because now the narrative was that all of the white folks were making all of the money and that we had zero interest in it. And the interesting thing was, like, you know, we missed the boat because we held on to these kind of beliefs, and they realized that, I think, that, you know, some of the things, all of our people come from these agrarian backgrounds. Yeah. You know, even if they moved north, I mean, these people's ancestors worked the land. So there's an ancient knowledge there. And I think that, you know, having opportunities like what's happening in the cannabis sector to get people to invest in this sector is going to be another part of this, you know, several of the different, not just Ujima, but also Ujima, also Nia, you know what I mean, to have a purpose for the next generation.
Yes, I really I'm super excited about the connectivity and the conversation throughout the day. So you guys are bringing up some things that we've touched on, maybe not talked about, but definitely touched on coming in. So, you know, Anton, Mrs. Seals, you've mentioned, you know, this generation.
Anton is cool. You don't have to call me no Mr. Seals.
But you mentioned, you know, this how we acknowledge the separation of generation, but at the same time, we're still here, and seeing Miss McGruder come as a new farmer, being encouraged by her daughter, right? So these are what we want to, you know, these are different generations, but working together towards a common goal. And you even mentioned, you know, how new opportunities resurface, right? So if a generation might have denied that, you know, a decade or two ago, but now that opportunity is back. So we have this kind of like an overlapping opportunity, if you will, between these generations as we continue to grow. And in earlier, we've mentioned, Ms. Perot, she acknowledged and willingly is accepting to join the conversation, but acknowledge the younger generations as we want to take leadership in directing this. So I think that's beautiful how these things are coming together. But you also, so we definitely have a question about social equity, but you mentioned this big topic. It's like the difference between social equity and liberation, because though we might, though the key word or the coin term might be social equity, we're looking for liberation through this agricultural space, and we don't want to miss the boat. So can you kind of expand on?
See, but Lakiah, can I just I think that's part of the issue is like,
tell me.
Well, it's not a bad issue. It's just like, I think that this is what we're all confronted with around missing the boat, because it's an economic opportunity. So we see dollar signs, which is, part of the capitalism. But it also, in capitalism, in this framework, means that there's inherently going to be losers, that you have to, in that system, you're buying low and selling high. So you want to be able, this has impacted farmers in terms of its raw production. The people who do the most work
get the least amount.
They're getting the least amount, right? Because of this system that is built on kind of extraction. And so I think this is more of a philosophical, I know that's not necessarily what you asked, but this is where, it's a philosophical kind of confrontation that we have to have around what we're actually saying that we all want, right? Because then we can say that we have 5 new millionaires and that should inspire the next generation, but that's not enough for us. Is as a nation, as a Black nation, what would that take for us to have enough so that there is the feeling of safety? So I think of it in a lot, these broader terms, and I know I'm being a little esoteric, but I think that that's where the confrontation is around the space, because on one end, when you're in business, there are, I can't ignore that I'm in a capitalistic structure. You know what I mean? This paradigm exists. Like, if I'm in business right now. I just was awarded a license. We're in business. We're raising a lot of money. We're setting stuff up. It's a lot of work. You know what I mean? And it's not my only job. But I'm also trying to think about, like, as you're entering into these spaces, and who most of the money is not coming from Black people, because our wealth is not, we don't have it like that. That risk is too high. Even if you have a couple $100,000, you don't have a couple $100,000 to risk on a new business. On one business, we don't have it that way. And it's not clustered enough. Even, this is where the wealth gap in terms of this current system, really kind of gives us, keeps us in a certain holding pattern. So I think that there is, some of that needs to be continually talked about.
So what now?
I think that was just Cassandra's iPhone going off. But listen to Miss McGruder, though, I would love to ask you, because you are like the diamond that everybody is like, the people who are going back to the land, who are, so organizations like Grow Greater Inglewood, not my cannabis company, but Grow Greater, we were created and exist to able to support the farmers, like the Miss McGruders, of like, where the resources, how do they deal with USDA, who walks them into it, who gives the technical assistance of taking your raw product and making it a value-added product, the distribution networks, like all of those things to support, because it's a lot of work, because then she's also got a farm.
Absolutely.
I also have a full-time consulting business, which is what affords me the freedom to farm. So I'm a CFO. So I am unapologetically coming out of corporate America, but I embrace culture, community, and the just coming back to my roots and coming back to agriculture, because that is one of the most honorable professions. And it is an honor for me to be a steward of the land and to get my hands in the dirt and to be shoulder to shoulder with others in the community. But I also know it takes dollars. So I'm balancing the economics versus the social good. And to your point, I do what I do really well, but what I can't do is everything. So in this year, I've been really blessed to partner with folks who are experts in their area, and I'm not trying to get all the dollars. I'm just trying to make sure that the team that we're putting together, one, we're of like mind in terms of our values and our commitment to not just getting to an end and doing something, but it's the process as well. The love of being a part of something greater than ourselves, the honor and dignity and coming back to our roots and realizing what our ancestors really wanted for us as descendants. That's really the core of why I'm here and what I do. But I'm still having to break through because you know what? I'm a urbanite female coming back to the country. And I'm just going to be honest. When I came here, until my cousins knew they were my cousins and I wasn't going to go away, when I need to get things done, they would never put me at the priority on their list of getting things done. Today, though, that is not the case. Today, the community has embraced me because I just wouldn't go away and I'm really here. And so the experts who are doing all of these other aspects of the business, whether it be building the infrastructure, I had to obviously hire a marketing team. I have some folks out of Florida who are doing the R&D. One of the things I'm really big on is, and not just in the cannabis and the CBD space, but female health and health as a whole. So while I come up with these great ideas that I feel are being dropped down into my spirit by a higher being and a higher calling, I'm now looking and reaching out to others. But you know what happens is, I've done a lot of volunteer work and I've given away a lot of time and I charge it off as a charitable contribution. But folks who I'm interacting with need to be paid. So finding ways and creative ways to be able to bring people on the team in order so that we can not only grow, but also vertically integrate by having the stores and working with others who have amazing ideas around this industry. I think for me, I just am here to recognize, identify, figure out how to provide the resources so that others can do their role and do their part to this big picture, this big network. But one of the things I do, according, kind of in line with what you're saying, Mr. Seals, is it takes resources. And I have been very blessed in private industry and corporate America to bring private investment, venture capital, all of that. And now I'm trying to do is figure out how to transition that into this agricultural space. I didn't do grants in the past, but grant writing is now a big part of where I spend a lot of my time working with others who are very successful with it and starting to develop these business plans, strategic plans. And most of the grants, and I'm going to speak on grants because most of these grants are about urban communities, about rural communities and economic development. Well, that is probably one of the easiest things we as a people, Black people in the South, that's who we are, that's what we have. But for some reason, either we haven't approached the big, these big dollar opportunities, or we're being denied. But I'm just going to believe, standing in faith and just not giving up, that we will start writing those kinds of plans that are going to hit those buzzwords, those getting those points in order to get the grants and be able to provide resources to others, other farmers and other opportunities and other ingenuity and other tangential businesses and added value to create an economy. Because yes, we're a part of the large American economy, but according to my history, every time we try to get in the game and play by the rules, those rules, we always end up on the losing end. We're the farmers who make the least amount out of this big vertical integration. But according to my research, there are quite a few steps up the rung that we need to be playing in, and we need to be playing up and down this vertical integration, but we cannot be doing this in and of ourselves. Everybody's got a role to play. We have to make sure that as we're thinking about this, in order to make this work, we have to do it in an equitable way. So we can't take a system that's already put in place. We really need to start with our own framework, figure out how equity, what does equity and inclusion mean for us? Not everybody else, but for us, especially us in this industry, because we have the opportunity to write this story. I know there's some work going on in large scale doing biomass and be able to sell internationally. Well, my background is international finance and investments. And so the ability to be able to move outside of the United States of America and get on into some of these other lands where we can sell and help to facilitate and grow our economy. Maybe we got to look outside the United States of America. I'm just saying, all hands, the gloves are off. I've already done it the corporate way. That doesn't work. All gloves are off. And I call myself the Black Warrior Queen. Our land is on the Black Warrior River. We're right up against the Black Warrior River. And it just sort of came to me because my name is Marie Antoinette, who was the Queen of France. And now I'm like, okay, ancestors, I see what y'all did. And now it's time to play. And I know I can't play by myself. I'm not even pretending. I just stand with a particular skill set. I'm not great at everything. I'm just great at what God has blessed me to be great at. But I know a lot of amazing, great people on this call who I haven't even met yet, and in this industry and in this space. And it's just time for us to put our actions where our words are. So I'm here, I got a farm, I got lots of acres. I'm writing grants, I'm putting my money in, I'm seeking others who are willing to do whatever part the universe has said is your part. Come on, step up to the plate and let's make this thing happen. And I don't have much more to say for the day except that, and I'm done.
Oh, I guess I gotta get my ticket to Alabama. ASAP. Look, that is one, I would just say, make sure that, you is an invitation, to join the National Black Food Justice Alliance. There is a community that is like, that is the community, people who have your stories that are in South Carolina and Mississippi. And it's inspiring every time I hear it, because people have had, of course, these really diverse experiences in life, and then are also now rooting it. And I think that is also an example for the next generation to come, so that we can set you guys up so that you can have. So one of the things I think that, and Gen X can help do, us 40-something-year-olds, right, 50-year-olds at this point, is to not make it so difficult for the next generation to be able to get platforms or leadership. Part of what with our work is to help you kind of just get to where you need to go and support you, right? And to also, and I think on your end, the what's needed is to be able to listen to the wisdom that is being offered from the experiences that people have had, so that we don't start over from scratch. Because what youth brings is that level of eagerness and excitement that, because it's still new. And part of having wisdom there is not that people are, poo-pooing on your ideas. It's also like, and I think that's where the intermediaries, like what we have to be able, this framework that Ms. McGruder talked about is so important, is that's the framework for us in terms of, these principles around, let Ujima be a guiding principle, that we each have a different role. And we do want to see the next generation, continue to do the work, to share, in the space. I'm not the only person that's not the goal. You know what I mean? But capitalism sometimes, when you're in that space, you believe that it's all about what you do, right? And that is the way that America is. That's the message. Is like, you are the person. It's because of you. Your ideal is the best thing out there. And it's like, yeah, however, given our stats, we need a little bit more than just that one success story. We need thousands of them, you know what I mean? Because the next generation has to be impacted in a different way, and they will have to be able to be much more potentially mobile than we have been, because of the dynamics of what's happened around the climate. Because what we're also calling out is, white male domination as a theory that has crippled the earth. And that's what has kind of been, across many of these people of color. but they've all been impacted by this kind of framework. So I like what she said around, because that's what's got to happen is these different frameworks that are emerging that works for us, that grounds us in our principles, which has to be balanced because we also know we're still here in this space, right? So you can't be so delusional that you think it's just going to be one way. When you're done with this, you're going to call and order a pizza. Well, I mean, that's part of the allure of capitalism is ease and convenience. And sometimes I don't think we often put that in the equation because we want those things. People want ease and convenience. It's human nature. So we're I think part of this collective work, and maybe what Tuskegee can continue to do is to have the gatherings so people can continue to network and to share, not just ideas, but so that people can know what's happening in Alabama. These are things that aren't necessarily on the radar in that way because everyone's not trying to promote it in that same way, right? But if this is a safe space where people can just share what their experiences are in the sector, particularly around as cannabis starts to emerge, again, it is a plant that needs much more research. There should be a bevy of research that is being done. Like this is a whole generation that can learn about cannabis, both the THC and the hemp. Our organization got a hemp processing license. And then it's like, okay, what do we do with this, right? In the urban setting, right? Like we knew what we wanted to do, but it's like all the inputs. And we said, we got to start with the land. You know what I mean? And what that looks like. And then when you go for us, it's like, okay, you can't grow this in the city in the same way because it still smells and looks like what people would think is weed. But it's a great phytoremediator for some of the spaces we have that needs to be cleaned. So can we integrate this plant not for consumption, but for its maybe, and not even for its, industrial usages either, but as a phytoremediator, as a plant that pulls toxins, and then that we're able to use that biomass and convert that into something else. So that's the level of, I think, amazing opportunities. Like what's old is new. So when you look at Carter G. Woodson, look at some of our early scientists, and you look at our scientists now, there's just so much opportunity because we've got so many different skills, and we need to be able to expose our young people to give them the opportunity to deploy those skills so that they can have the room to fail, right? Because that is what it's all about. It's having the room to fail so you can keep learning and keep going forward. You're not going to hit it like overnight, but in nature, all of us farmers, that's the whole point. Like you don't control when it rains. You just don't. It's a humility of that you can't do it alone and you don't get to call all the shots. You can manipulate it, but I think that's to us, for our network, that's what we can't control for that. You know what I mean? We can have some mitigation factors, but we can't control it, right? So I think that is all part of the collective work and responsibility.
You guys are absolutely amazing. I feel supported. I feel loved. I feel affirmed because of the things that you're sharing. You touched totally on the question about social equity, understanding that we don't necessarily have the answer. We have to create that vision for ourselves. And Ms. McGruder, you've provided, you've said it 1,000 times. You're thinking of creative ways for us to reach this point because we understand, to Mr. Seal's point, it's a give and take, and we have this, we're in a capitalistic sector. So we have to acknowledge that, but we have to determine what does balance look like for us. And then just constantly to be affirmed in this space as a younger generation, and Candace and I reflect on it often, how Tuskegee affords us the opportunity to be leaders, how Tuskegee has seen us also affords us the opportunity to fail, but still supports us in our growth. So one thing, because you've touched on social equity and you've made it, you've said it, we have to define what this looks like, and we have to define it outside of these structures, because the corporate structures, they're not working for us. We've already been marginalized in these areas, so we have to create our own our situation. So could you tell, one question came from the audience and I think it's very fitting, like what does it look like to create these agricultural spaces? Like what does it look like to create these equitable spaces?
Ooh, I'm going to tell you. So I've been working on the plan for, and when I say I, please know, I don't mean it in a selfish way, but the ideas are coming and I'm putting them down on paper. So I have taken the framework, for example, when I was in Philly consulting for over last winter, I had plenty of time in the evening to go on YouTube, and I saw a farm up in the Catskills of New York called Never Sink Farms. This gentleman is making $350,000 off an acre and a half cash crop. Okay. So he's got a farm in New York. I'm in Alabama. A lot of the things that he has as issues, concerns, or whatever are not the issues to the Black Belt, this beautiful Black rich soil we have down here. So one of the things I know is I can grow hemp, I can grow medicinal herbs, I can grow vegetables. We can talk about feeding our babies, because we live in a food desert, feeding our babies healthy food. What does that look like to me? Under one of the companies I have, what I like to do is in the school system. So people like convenience. Maybe it's, I have some of the elders come over to my commercial kitchen and prepare meals, and we do like the major chefs do, when you get online and you order your fresh food out of the garden, and it gets food prepped and we deliver it to your home. You're feeding your babies, we all eating healthy, and we're having a better, healthier life. It also means on the 2 big lakes that are out on our farm, maybe that means I'm going to get some resources in order to build employee housing. So guess what? Some of the students from Tuskegee, some of the folks who are helping out on the farm, and maybe even some glamping goes on the land. The point is, whatever my ancestors say is okay for me to do, and it is honorable and it is moving the community forward, I'm prepared to stick my neck out and say, I'm going for it. And even if the naysayers are standing on the sidelines saying it ain't gonna happen, all I know is I'm starting to write grants and the resources are coming. So just getting out of the box. I'm not trying to do everything from scratch myself, but those things that are working, some are social and they don't have necessarily a economic payoff, but they do because I'm, feeding into the lives of my community, and others are direct cash into the bank to be able to build the infrastructure for all these other things that are going on. It means that no holds bar. I just can't be afraid to put myself out there and, you know what, possibly fail. But guess what? If I don't try, I won't know. And that's just not in my DNA. So I'm good. We're gonna keep trying.
Absolutely. Mr. Seals, do you have any closing remarks to that about how we're creating this space? We got about,
I think, for us in Chicago on the South Side, it's been around, putting a structure together so that we can secure different spaces for growing and for learning, building out partners that can then have a space. So it's just like what you said, like what you're good at, what we've been positioned to leverage, like that's what we're doing. And I think one of the lessons I've learned is to be able to do it, for, at least from my point of view, is to be able to keep your head down and be able to get it done and then speak on it. As opposed to like and I think champion it just hasn't been my approach. Because I want to, and a part of that is just around how do we, the we, building that we mind state is so critical, because that means that you have to have a lot of room for, sharing, of stepping up and stepping back, which is, a challenge, as opposed to the speed of an eye, which you can make a decision because it's yours. So sometimes that's really challenging. And what you have to have is this kind of recipe of who needs to be, to what Ms. McGruder talked about, not just the skills, but people who are driven by the same value system, right? When there is conflict, that we know we're all committed to working it out, right? Because sometimes you bring people who have different values in a space because they look like you. And the assumption is we all have the same. That is not always the same thing. So I would say that's also very important to be able to build a team, because you're also building a structure that has to move so it can come out of the kind of esoteric into the actual real thing. So that requires focus. You know what I mean? It's not that you can't do big pictures, but you have to chew that one bite of elephant first. You know, somebody got to fillet it, barbecue it, bake it, however you're going to do it. Yeah. It still has to be prepared. And in that preparation, you know what I mean? Because you got a lot of other chunks you still got to take a bite out of. So I think that for us, to be able to create a space where, for us, is where movement spaces, social movements, and this kind of agriculture and technology innovation can have a hive where they can cross-pollinate these ideas. So, we're in the process of building out that kind of laboratory or launch pad incubator space that meets. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of different, but we, just acquired a school on the south side. We're building a nature trail that's 2 miles long. So we're creating, what does it mean to create Black space? And that's what we're really working on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, both Anton and Miss Marie. As Candace says, we're in total alignment. I think you guys also are in total alignment with the ideas that you proposed to us today, and going internal first, but to change our mental mindset so we can work in this community space together, but also, to your point, Ms. McGruder, always acknowledging our ancestral guides who are telling us exactly what to do and not being afraid to stick our neck out and get it done. So thank you guys so much for this beautiful panel. We're right on the money to flow into our next panel. I'm taking
before you all slide, I'm about to say we gotta at the end of every session we do shameless plugs, right? Because it's about building community, right? And I know, Anton, you got a lot going on. Sister Marie, we all got a lot going on. So definitely please be sure to let us know, take 30 seconds and just let us know some of the things that you've got going on, where people can find you, and drop it in the chat because we're compiling a list.
So you can reach out to me at McGruder Farms with an S on the end at gmail.com. So now, Tribe of Jacob's Ladder is a part of the community. So we have just opened up the Tribe of Jacob's Ladder Innovation Center in the Akron Library, where we donate 5 hours a week to other businesses unrelated to agriculture, anything. It could be tax returns, it could be business plans, it could be just going out and get your LLCs and your EINs, whatever. That's just part of our give back to the community and helping to build community. Also, McGruder Farms, and then we have Black Warrior Hemp Company, and hopefully soon to come on Black Warrior Winery for muscadine wine. The other last thing is my personal initiative around criminal justice and equity, disparity is Black Warrior Queens, because for women, a lot of, especially melanated women, Black women, we get bogged down with the things of our past, and it gives us an opportunity to be the best that we can be. That's it.
Thank you.
I guess for me, am I still on?
Yes, sir.
You can hear me? Okay. So I put them in the chat there. Growgreater.org is the organization I'm a part of. There's one other, the Green Era, which I'm on the board of, which is a carbon sequestration.
Bang, 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 bang.
Hold on, let me put that on there. Green Era.
Yeah, it's a lot. Chicago is lit. I argue that we're doing the best in urban agriculture, arguably against Detroit, but I wave my flag.
Well, those are cousins, but I think that there is, I would say is, one of the things that we've been able to do, if I can encourage many people, is to check out the National Black Food Justice Alliance. We have new leadership, but it is an alliance. We people who are joining, we are growing that membership. It is a great, communal space for us to learn and share. Plenty of elders and young folks. So I would also big plug National, and I put that link in there. And then Candace, any other thing that I forgot, and I'll add to the list that you all create. But thank you again, Asante Sana, for having me on this fifth day of Kwanzaa. Nia, yeah, it's always reaffirming my purpose. Peace.
Thank you all
everybody.
so much. Thank you all so much. We're gonna do a hard transition because we've been on time. We packed a lot into this schedule. So I'm gonna call Dr. Shakir up, and she's going to briefly introduce us to our next topic, our next principle for the week. And that principle is cooperative economics. So again, Lakiah, you touched on it. These things are coming back to back to back. And I mean, of course, the Nguza Saba is created so that they flow in this way, but it is just flowing flawlessly at this point. We are so in alignment. So I am also going to call forth our next group of guest speakers, Mr. Nadir Pearson, Coach Swan, and CK Johnson, with a facilitation by Matthew Robinson. So you all, let's be prepared to go as soon as Dr. Shakir is finished with introducing this next principle.
Okay, can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right, very good. Wow, that was powerful. I wanted to jump in so many times. But obviously there'll be more opportunities for us to really do a lot more exchanging of wonderful ideas as we move forward to create a new reality for our people. So our next principle of the day is called Ujima, which means cooperative economics. And I think we've been skirting around that in a lot of different ways already since the last three. And that is to build and maintain our own stores, shops, and our own businesses, and to profit from them together, which would be unlike a capitalistic model. So we are looking at cooperative economics, Ujamaa.
Ashe. So Brother Matthew, Coach Swan, Nadir, and CK, you all can go ahead and unmute yourselves. And Lakiah, the Clark sisters are going to fall to the back and let the masculine energy kind of step up and have some chats. So we're going to give y'all some room. And we're looking super forward. Oh, man, I miss your face, man. I miss you. You all, we're in for a treat. So thank you all for coming. And Matt, take it away.
Greetings. Appreciate it, everybody.